Hello, everybody, and welcome to what is the fifth in this series of the Racing Together webinar series. And they've been really interesting episodes so far. This is the fifth of six, so we've still one more to look forward to in February. And this one is, of course, titled "With Fierce Competition for Young People's Attention, What Are the Odds That Racing is Passing Them By?" And we've got a really great panel for you today of very different people within the industry and to talk about this very broad topic, but I'm sure we'll have plenty of interesting points. As always, these series are available through the Racing Together website. You can go on and watch the video, or on YouTube, and they're also available as a podcast for you to watch back later. So I really encourage you to go onto the Racing to Learn website and have a look at them. There's some really interesting topics that have already been covered really well with different panelists. We won't waste any time because it's such a broad topic, and we'll get right into it. I'll introduce myself. I'm Sally Ann Grassick. I was lucky enough to be born into racing from a racing family. My grandfather was a jockey and trainer. My father was a bloodstock agent. All of my family are basically in the industry, and I started out working in racing yards as an amateur jockey, and then was lucky enough to fall into the media side of racing. And after some time in France, I'm now working with ITV Racing in Britain, and also I'm based back home in Ireland now, and I do a lot of freelance work and run my own media and management company. And I also run, I founded a Twitter account called Thoroughbred Tales, which aims to promote racing to a wider audience using the people within the industry. So I feel very passionately about promoting this industry to outside audiences, and this is a topic that's very close to my heart, so I'm delighted to be hosting it. We'll run through our panelists because we've got some really great people on for each day. I'll start with Tim Williams, since Tim, I know you very well through our ITV Racing time.
Yeah, hi. I'm Tim. I'm producer for ITV Racing, often the voice in Sally Ann's ear as she helps us out of trouble. And yeah, I've always been a racing fan. Didn't really have any horses. Dad and Grandad liked it, and just got into it through watching on TV and going to the races. Then went into journalism with Sky, and then joined ITV Racing just before it launched.
Yeah, and we've been delighted to have you on board. Tim has brought some really great ideas to ITV, especially in bringing in a younger audience, especially during the pandemic, which made things particularly difficult for the television side of things. We also have Arvin Chadi, and Arvin, you are getting extra bonus points tonight because you're currently based in Australia, and you're staying up extra late at night to join us.
Thank you. Thanks, Sally. Yes, like you said, I'm currently in Australia. I work for Godolphin Australia in the nominations team. I didn't have a racing background, similar to what Tim said, just a fan. And then my dad used to take me to Epsom to watch the Derby. Remember Galileo winning it, and just falling in love with the sport at the age of 8. Followed it since then, and I'm very lucky because I feel like I'm a student of the industry. I graduated from the Northern Racing College. They taught me everything I know about horses, putting a head collar on to riding them. And then I was lucky enough to do the Godolphin Flying Start program. So the industry has provided me with some unbelievable opportunities for someone who, like I said, is just a fan of watching horses running.
Yeah, I think that's we all fall in love with it that way, and then we all get sucked in. Once you're in, you can't get back out. And Sam, I know that Samantha Martin, who's joined us as well, I know you've managed to get out of school to join us today, so it's not as big a sacrifice for you, but you're equally passionate about the younger generation getting into racing.
Yeah, completely. And like you say, I'm still in school, so it's about balancing the amount of racing I watch and with my homework as well, and that kind of thing. I'm 17. Horse racing's kind of been part of my life for as long as I can remember, just watching it with family. And I started writing for Rain and Racing just over 4 years ago, kind of never looked back since then. And this year I started as a content creator with Careers in Racing, and that's been incredible. I've had so many incredible moments with them, and actively to try and get more young people into racing, and I'm sure we'll get on to their work in a little bit.
Yeah, and last but not least, of course, we have Elaine Burke. Elaine, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi everyone, good afternoon. So I'm Elaine Burke. I work in the Equuip department within Horse Racing Ireland for careers, education and the human welfare side of things. I come from a very small racing background. My brother trains a few horses in Tipperary in Ireland. I have a sister who was a jockey in the UK and Ireland and is now riding in America. So I suppose I'm ingrained. I know the good and the bad and how things can go. So yeah, that's basically me. I'm in Horse Racing Ireland. We're a division within Horse Racing Ireland, and I'm there for the last 15 years. So they got me in and they never got rid of me. But yeah, that's basically me.
Well, it's really nice to meet you all, and thank you for joining us today. And we'll get into it straight away, because as I said, it's such a broad topic. But maybe we'll start with Tim. I know you've been particularly, we mentioned about the pandemic there, but particularly interested in getting the younger generation into racing, and a younger generation of fans, and appealing to them through your work with ITV. And what are your ideas? How do you think that we can appeal to a new generation?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think I'm giving away any state secrets here if I said, like, when you look at the analysis of our audience, most of it is middle-aged or over, proportionally. That's not necessarily a racing thing, but across television in general, if you look at Strictly Come Dancing, the same kind of thing will apply across the sport. So I think it is important that, as well as making the television product as good as it can possibly be, we're also reaching young people on platforms that they are using and they are on. They're not all necessarily sitting down in front of the TV. They might be on, and also the things they use are not necessarily what adults use. So they might be on TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube, things like that, whereas more the adults are on Twitter or Facebook, for example. So we've got to kind of reach them where they are. And I would say the choice that there used to be between, you know, in the old days, you would have to stay in to watch the racing to find out what happened that afternoon. And if you went out, you miss it. The next time you might find out what happened was either, if you got lucky, on the radio on the way home, on CFAX, or in the next day's newspaper. These days, that choice doesn't really exist anymore, all because of the smartphone. You can stream the racing live on the ITV Hub if you go out. You can follow it on social media. There are Twitter clips and things like that of the races and stuff like that. So I think it's important that racing gets on the platforms and has a really good offering on those platforms. And you can see it with other sports as well, like NFL, football, the amount of money and investment that goes into their social media strategies on those platforms that young people are on, and the research. Racing has a battle to kind of keep up with all of that. I mean, on ITV Racing, we introduced things like the social stable. Chris Hughes, for example, is involved with that. People kind of, if young people do stumble across the television program, they're more likely to hopefully look at something like that and go, oh yeah, this is the kind of program that might be for me, and not, this is the kind of program that my granddad would enjoy. You know, that's kind of where we're trying to kind of come at it from. And we don't just appeal to young people, we have to really cater for the whole spectrum. And it depends what kind of day it is as to what audience we approach. And there are little things like homeschooling, for example, in the mornings. Horse racing's got quite a shareable content base. It's like with your Thoroughbred tales and all the other kind of things, which at the end of the day, people quite like watching short videos of fluffy cats and animals and stuff. Racing has loads of great stuff like that, which it can do and really explain and attract that young audience. And if it's on those platforms that they are on, then we're more likely to reach those young people than assuming they're all going to tune in, find the television program, which, you know, isn't always going to be the case.
Yeah, I know that I broached Scary World of recently, and it was not an easy place to be, but it's mad what you're saying, Tim, about the fluffy cats and dogs kind of side of things. I put up a video of a foal falling over on TikTok. It's had over 203,000 views, so it shows that we do have the content there, that when you do kind of share it with a wider audience, you can see that. And Sam, as our youngest person on the panel, we're all, of course, very young at heart, but as our youngest person, how do you see, when you hear the things that Tim is saying that ITV are particularly doing to try and appeal to a younger audience, how do you feel that applies to your friends?
I think it's excellent. I love like homeschooling content. I think that's brilliant, because a very unique thing about racing is obviously the horses. We've got so much equine talent, and as well, it's nice to kind of break that barrier between like what you see on the racecourse and what happens at home, because obviously we all know racing's kind of reputation, and to see the homeschooling videos just gives people that little bit extra insight to what's going on. I mean, I don't have TikTok and I don't have Snapchat, so I can't talk about that. But I mean, all the content on like Instagram, a lot of racing yards are brilliant with that. And I definitely think maybe in the pandemic, it has really helped that people are putting out their content a lot more, it seems. There seems to have been a big push for that. And I mean, I appreciate it. I work with Prison Racing to put out social media content. Like I went to Warwick for the pony racing taster day with them, and I had a Instagram takeover. I mean, we had like 300 people engaging with it, and it was brilliant. And we that day really showed just what a great product racing is for youngsters. We had about 100 there, and they were just loving it. They saw Ollie Murphy's horses schooling, their faces for that. It was incredible. So many different tasks that showed just how good racing is and the attraction there. And I think a lot of children got a real passion for horse racing from it. And that's the main thing. You've just got to expose people of my age to the realities of the sport, everything that's so good about it. And I think that's what the social media content and the social stable that ITV Racing has is doing.
You mentioned careers in racing there that you do a lot of work with. Do you think that non-racing people know about things like career in racing? Do you think enough is being done to kind of promote that outside of our little bubble?
I think it's obviously not quite there yet, but I know the guys at Prison Racing are doing a lot to try and push it out into the wider world. They go to apprenticeship shows, and that's where I saw them. And that they've got their equisizers that always catches a few eyes, and hopefully people go over and have a look into the job opportunities. And I think we're racing to school, taking groups then. It's just making it known that it's not just horses running around a field. There's a lot more to it than that. And it's not just a sport for old people. There's plenty to love for people my age. I mean, it enriches my life, I suppose. I love it. And I don't understand why anybody my age would not want to be involved.
Well, I see it with racing to school when I've interviewed them, when I've interviewed John Blake and that for ITV, and with the groups of children that they bring to the races, and you see their faces when they get up close to it. Like there's something about a horse, that attracts children of all different backgrounds. And I think that's brilliant. And one of the things, Tim will know, one of the things that I always do whenever a new person comes to the racing, I did with Charlotte Hawkins when she first came to ITV, is bring them down to the final fence of Cheltenham. Because if you don't fall in love with racing standing at the final fence in Cheltenham when they all thunder past you, then there's no hope for convincing anybody to fall in love with racing if they don't love that moment. It's something that if you could bottle and sell it, I think racing would achieve so much more to get that feeling when you hear them thundering past you. But Elaine, through your work with Equuip, we're hearing what Sam's saying, what they're doing with careers in racing in the UK and that. And through your work with Equuip, how have you found that trying to bring racing to that outside kind of audience?
I suppose we have a lot of the same issues, and it's trying to reach that demographic and, plant the seed, I always say, and give them a touch point. So I suppose we're just launching actually in the next week a transition year program to secondary level schools here in Ireland. It's basically a gap year where secondary school kids take a year out to decide what they want to do in life and come away from the books for a while. So we've created a 6th module. It's called Foal to Race. And it's literally bringing them into the life of a racehorse from the day they're born and going the whole way through the cycle. We already have 60 schools signed up for that without advertising. So there is a passion, and there is, I suppose, an appetite for it within schools. And that's giving a touch point to kids that know nothing about our industry. We have some of our best flat jockey. One of our best flat jockey actually had a touch point with a horse through transition year, had never touched a horse before, and is now one of our best flat jockeys in Ireland. So it's infiltrating and it's getting in there and getting our message across. And I suppose a really valid point is you don't need to come from the industry. And that's something that we need to break down and make people realize you can come from any background. This industry is open and we're welcome. So I suppose that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get in more to our pony racing and our pony clubs. Those people already have that passion and are already ingrained in it. So it's bringing them into the horse racing industry before we lose them. We have a lot of projects coming up this year through our racing academy on how we can do that, and maybe give them little mini licenses days so they get a little license to ride in you know, and what it looks like to be a jockey. And I suppose it's important that not everyone becomes a jockey. That's the dream. And that's okay. If you don't become, there's so many other career pathways you can go down. Like, you know, I didn't become a jockey, and I'm still ingrained, and there was no chance that I would ever become a jockey. But there is other pathways, and there is other careers and other opportunities. And I think we need to get across to our parents as well, you know, to break down the illusion that racing isn't really the place that people want to be, because it is. And there's so much out there. There's so much resources. You know, we have career maps, and we're really trying to get that into our parents. This is a good industry for your children to come and work in. So we have a lot of projects, and they seem to be going quite well. And we're hoping this TY project will even get people to come racing and bring their families with them, you know. So
yeah, I know. I think when you get away from the old kind of idea that racing is ingrained in betting and gambling and all that side of things, and there's so many people, I say it all the time, that love racing not for that side of it at all, that purely for the love of the horses and the love of the sport. And when you can appeal to people and break down that barrier, and especially when you're talking about the pony clubs, like that is a target audience waiting to just be poached, because they are all pony mad already, and get it before they lose that interest and move on to other things later on. But Arvin, you came into it from a completely outside of the racing background, and you've had first experience at the moment with the Godolphin Flying Start, that experience that racing gives you, that you can travel the world through the sport, through the industry. But did you feel you were welcomed into it when you first came into racing from outside of it?
Probably one of the best mottos I've ever heard is that you enter the racing industry for the horses, but you stay because of the people. I was so lucky with some of the people I've met in the industry, from the trainers I worked for, my teachers at the Northern Racing College, the team at Careers in Racing that helped me go from a city boy growing up in North London, having never touched a horse, to getting me a place at the racing school. And it had really, just being part of this industry has changed my life. I was lucky enough to get onto the Flying Start program, where, like you said, I've traveled all the world, and there's not many industries where you have a skill that is applicable in some of the most interesting and beautiful locations internationally. You can take a skill you learn working with horses to Dubai, the US, Australia, anywhere you can think of. It really opens doors for you, and you meet the most wonderful characters. For me, it was life-changing, and I can't emphasize enough how much I would love to encourage as many people to at least give it a go. For me, it was just this nagging thought in my head, can you ride a horse? You should try at least. And I did, and I couldn't not imagine the doors and opportunities it opened up. It's quite an incredible industry, and I think we are doing amazing things, especially through Careers in Racing, the 2 racing schools we have, programs like the Flying Start, like football doesn't have a program like it, and it has far more of a fan base than racing does, but it doesn't cater to the younger generation like the Flying Start program does. But of course, there's still great work being done, like Elaine said, and bridging the gap between the city to what is a rural sport is paramount. I was only able to do it at the old age of 21 to finally touch a horse, because I was lucky. My dad used to take me racing. So I guess it's up to us to kind of bring racing to the cities in that regard, and try and touch people in that similar sort of way. But I'm very proud to see things like the work we're doing even today. We're making strides in those directions, and it's great to be a part of it.
When you decided that you wanted to get involved in the industry and you wanted to take your interest further, how readily available was the information for you to find a pathway into the industry?
It's a funny story, actually. I did what anyone now does, is I typed, how do I get into the horse racing industry, into Google. And lucky for me, the first website that came up was Careers in Racing. And it was just a plethora of information. It broke down what I needed to do in terms of my current situation, and gave me the information, or directed me to the Northern Racing College website, which just where the journey started, really. Had to put on a head collar, and then the next day I had to sit on the horse. So the information is out there. Careers in Racing do a great job regarding that. Then the racing schools do an even better job of actually making you enter the industry and providing you the skills to go as far as you can. And like Elaine said, I was very naive before entering the industry. I literally thought there was two jobs, jockey and a trainer. But as Elaine pointed out, we need to do a better job of promoting the incredible opportunities that are in our sport, from like yourself, Sally-Ann, in media, Tim in media, and Elaine with HRI governing bodies. You can do anything you want, quite literally. And that's something I think is important that we promote out there, that it's not just be a jockey or a trainer. There's some incredible opportunities in racing.
Yeah, I know through some of the work, talking at careers days, that like, training courses like CAFRE in Ireland, or on the Irish National Stud Management course, so many people know they want to work with horses, they just don't know how or which area of it. And it's kind of refining that and knowing that you want to be in the industry, but finding your place within it. But there are so many places. And we have had a question come in, and of course you can ask questions through the chat function at the bottom of the screen, and we'll try and get through as many as possible. But I'll see who would like to, I'll put it up to the panel who would like to answer this question. It's, how important does the panel feel programs like pony racing, riding programs, and pony academies are in engaging young people by giving them the opportunity to be around horses? And who would like to tackle that subject?
I'll give it a go, if that's okay. Sorry, Elaine, I didn't mean to jump
go
in
ahead.
There. But like, I think pony racing is paramount. Some of the getting younger kids involved into horse racing, not just through like eventing or but actually teaching them the racing side of it. That kind of buzz you can't replicate, and that kind of adrenaline rush, and if you catch it early, it must be an incredible thing for a child to achieve. And then that's just the first step on the ladder, and then whatever they achieve afterwards is amazing. But I'll let Elaine answer it, because obviously HRI do some great stuff.
No, I suppose we've learned they are already there waiting, ready for us to attract them to this side of the equine industry. The enthusiasm is there. They're racing, they're actually racing in races, and they have that competitive and that love for it. So it's to bring them in, and as Sally-Ann said, it's to show them what other careers are there, and that it's not, yes, it'd be great if you're the next big jockey, but not everyone will happen to them. But we want to show them where else they can go within the industry, and not lose them to some other industry because they haven't made it as a jockey. And then the pony circuit is the exact same. They already have that love and that passion. So it's just to nurture that and to bring them through the journey of horse racing and breeding and what we can offer. We put on a great series last year of people behind the moments. So we highlighted all the careers that were in the background and took a snapshot of a stall handler, media representatives, and showed them how vast it is. You could become a videographer. So it's vast, and it's how to get into it, and it's to make sure that we have the resources for them to go and find out how they can go about this and what courses are available to them through equine.
Yeah, I work with so many people through all different areas that didn't get, got into racing because it was a different job, and then they ended up becoming interested in racing because their individual skill got them into it. And some of the stats here are really interesting. The Newmarket Pony Academy it is on track to welcome over 300 students through its program in its first year. So that's obviously doing great work. Invades offers young people and students unique and affordable sporting experiences on premier race days like Champions Day. So that's great work. And of course, Racing to School, which is a brilliant initiative, Their nationwide work has engaged over 8,000 young people in 2021 and aims to reach its 200,000th participant in March this year. So, you know, that's brilliant. We've had Clarissa Daly, who we know very well, of course, through her work with pony racing, has sent us a message from the Pony Racing Authority saying pony racing in GB brings in more than just equestrians in this country. It introduces all their friends and their families. We have proof that they are all going into work in different aspects of the industry. We also have programs working with inner city riding schools and have fully funded programs for children who don't own their own ponies. We've been running these since 2013 and have shown that over 35% of those who take part in the programs go on to work in the industry. So that's great work. The Pony Racing Authority obviously do amazing work, and it's brilliant that they're keeping those young people in the industry. And we've had a question from Brent Williams, who says, what more do you think Racecourses in particular should be doing to attract the younger audience? And maybe Sam, you could answer that. What do you think?
Something that I've been quite vocal about my kind of support of would be like I feel like horse racing, some people can consider it to have quite a lot of jargon. Like there's a lot going on that maybe if you're not exposed to horses, you probably don't understand. So I think one of the things that maybe Racecourses could do is add like information boards, maybe by the parade ring, to show headgear and all the different tack horses would have, or an extra help for looking at race cards and that kind of thing. And I think with Racecourses, I think something that helped me get into racing when I went to the races was meeting the jockeys and asking them to sign my race card. I was buzzing all through the day, because before a race I'd just go and ask and they'd be like, yeah, of course. And you just don't get that in other sports, really. Like you could never walk up to a Premier League football player and say, can you sign for me? Because with racing, there's no kind of barrier between you and the participants, if that makes sense. And I think if Racecourses can maybe promote that, see if they can get any jockeys in to do signings, meet and greet, that kind of thing. I know Holly Doyle and Tom Marquand did one somewhere through the summer. More things like that, because you know we've got a great product, and a part of that is meeting the participants.
Yeah, I think I've always said that.
Like.
Sorry, Tim. Yeah.
So I think Racecourses, this might sound a bit negative, but it doesn't mean to be. I kind of see racing as having like a pros column and a cons column, if you like. And for the outsider looking at it, and the idea is it's got to provide a lot of pleasure and entertainment to people, and that's got to outweigh what people see as the negatives. And in November, it was that day when there was a 2-runner race at Cheltenham, and a lot of my friends came along to the races, and I caught up with them after it came off air. And at about 4 o'clock, I said, "How's your day?" And they said, "Yeah, it was good, but in the second race, I couldn't really have a bet because the favourite was 2-1 on. In the third race, I couldn't really have a bet in that either. There was only 2 runners. And then in the race after that, yeah, it was a bit uninspiring as well. So to be honest, it's a bit of a shame. Where are all the horses gone?" And someone else chipped in and said, "Oh, did that horse who pulled up at the end, did he survive?" And it was like the 2 things I think Racecourses can do is to minimise that negative column. One, have a look at their racecourses, and particularly jumps courses. And a lot of people will disagree with me on this, and go, how can we make this racecourse 20% safer? The best thing I think racing has done in the 21st century by a mile is the changes it made to the Grand National. Because if it was still carrying on every year, that society is way more sensitive to equine fatalities than it used to be. So if Racecourses can look at it, and if it requires losing some of the character of the racecourse, I think that is a definite price to pay if they can reduce the number of moments people go away from a racecourse with a sad feeling. And also, I know there's a lot of going on with this, the quality jumps review and all that kind of thing, but the competitiveness of the races and the pleasure people get on the track is key. I think the amount of off-track improvement over the last 20 years, facilities and stuff, Racecourses have done a brilliant job on the whole. The on-track stuff, I'm not quite sure has improved as much. I think if you look at the Cheltenham Festival, I was looking at Isterbrack earlier, 17 runner champion hurdles, 16 runner, ran 4 times at the festival. There was never less than 12 runners in a race. Yes, the horse was probably going to win. It went off a fairly short favourite, but it was a spectacle. There was like it looked good when you tuned in. Nowadays, do we have that? I'm not sure it's as good as it used to be because of the more choices for the horses at the top end. And I think racing does kind of need to look at the product on the tracks. At the end of the day, fans to the sport will become engaged in the on-track sport. And that really has to be as good as it possibly can be.
And, you know, we've always said that that's why jump racing is an easier product to market, because the horses have more longevity and that they stay around, so people get more invested in the stories and the battles, you know, the Koto Star and Denman. But we haven't kind of had something since that, with that kind of big build up to those sort of stories. But you know, what Sam was saying about some of the work they're doing on race courses, you see that, you know, I know when we went to Wetherby with ITV and a few other race courses we've been to, they have models, like life-size examples of the fences that the horses jump and the different things that they do, and behind the scenes tours of race courses kind of showing people what's going on is great. I took part in them when I worked in France. And out in America, one of the brilliant things they do in California is they have retirees from the local community giving like mini little talks at the start of racing, explaining jargon and guiding people around and giving like a half an hour like how to bet lesson. And it's great to bring those people from the industry back in to tell those stories. So I think there's still plenty to do to improve the racing on the track experience. Like Tim said, I often say that the person who's the least informed on a race day is the person who's actually at the races, because like you said, your friends, you don't know if the horse pulled up. If you're not sat at home watching the television, you know, watching your phone and knowing what's going on, you're often the least informed person when you're actually there. Very
quickly, on a slightly more positive note, and what Sam said was spot on about jargon. We try and do jargon busters almost every show, you know, that presents to it, you know, encourage like yourself to explain little concepts in a kind of non-patronizing way. And I think it is important, just things like Racing to School and all the other projects, the thing I think they are most valuable for, in addition to the educational benefit to the kid, is that when that person gets invited on a work day to the races when they're 20, 30 years old, they have a rough idea of what is going on. It's quite a low threshold, but the amount of people at the races, certainly at the festivals, who don't even watch the races is extraordinary. It's on a telly in the corner of the bar. And you ask them at the end of the day when they go home, how many races were there today? A lot of them don't even know that. Just the bare minimum of when you go to the races, you can generally expect 7 races, roughly half an hour apart, and that the jockeys don't own all the horses, that kind of thing. Like, very bare minimum. But if they can know those basics and get that explained on the way in, they're far more likely to engage with the sport in the future.
Yeah, even just, I saw somebody did a video, I can't remember where it came from, and it was going around asking racegoers how many furlongs in a mile, which to any of us would seem like the most basic, obvious information. And I think one person got it right by fluke after guessing about 3 other numbers, but it was unbelievable to us. It would seem like a basic thing when you're working in the industry, but we kind of sometimes take for granted, you know, spreading that and making that jargon. Although it is something that people find interesting to be able to you know, research and look it up and find like this about when you are, and it's got to have the kind of availability of it as well. We've some other questions. I think we've covered unless anybody has anything else to say. It's been mentioned that racing is on more platforms than ever before and coverage is more advanced than ever. How can race courses keep giving young people experiences they can't get at home? Does anybody got anything to add to the great points that Tim made?
Given Irish, I suppose what we've done is, and we focus a lot on our secondary students, we did bring them groups of students to a race meeting and introduce them to the stewards and brought them up to the commentator. They ended up presenting a prize, you know, for the first race, and gave them a whole, and it was just, they loved it. This was kids that had never even set foot in their local racetrack. So I think bringing that local and that community spirit to your race course, you know, engaging with the local trainers, engaging with local jockeys. It doesn't have to be a race day sometimes, you know, it can be non-race days and show the facilities that are there. But I think it's important to bring that community spirit, keep it local, keep it with the people that are in that area. And that always seems to work and drive people and give them an enthusiasm for the industry.
I think that's especially true in Ireland anyway. There's such pride in the racehorses from the local area. You know, you see them painted on like pubs and things when you drive through villages like down the country of like the older racehorses from before. and there's such pride, and we've such great, really passionate people in the industry who are only dying to be used as advocates to promote it. So I think the more you can do of getting them out and about, and you know, they take great pride. You drive through Rachel Blackmore's village, and there's a massive sign saying, you know, Rachel Blackmore like was here, basically. So you see that pride. Even Carlo were trying to take credit for Rachel Blackmore when she won the Grand National because she lives there. So it's great to have that kind of pride in it in the area. Olivia has asked a question: are there specific things you think racing should learn or adopt from other sports which are experiencing increased popularity, such as Formula One, in order to grow its audience? And maybe Tim, you can talk about that, because there has been a lot of talk about this Netflix, you know, that we could get a Netflix racing version. Yeah,
I mean, we've got a little documentary series on ITV at the moment. There was one with Holly Doyle. It's got other sports stars in, and I'm working on one with Johnny Murtagh, which airs later on, and there's a couple other racing ones as well. But it's not the kind of same series thing following race. But I actually think it would be a great idea if it could happen. And if that's a different way for people to get into the sport, it is. I think Formula One, though, going back to my point about competitive racing, I'm not a huge Formula One fan, but I don't know if you saw the other day, the end of the season, that is a sport that 15 years ago, 20 years ago, was pretty boring, because Michael Schumacher was winning everything. The favourite rocked up, won, hardly any overtaking. They thought, hang on, we're not engaging fans quite as much here. Look what they're doing now. Everything they do is about they're nailing the off-track product, investing in social media and all that, but the on-track product, every rule they bring in is designed to bring in more overtaking. That thing they did at the end with Verstappen and Hamilton, like, whether you agree with it or not, it was about competitiveness, which suggests, their research says, young people want competitive action on the sport. And I think, like, attention spans are interesting, right? Because I think there are two kind of trends, I think, amongst young people, which racing is kind of staring itself in the face, not realizing it has a huge advantage on both these points. One, people want things to be shorter. And secondly, there's a huge, if you Google fantasy football growth or something like that into YouTube, it'll come up fantasy football, and things that take a lot of thought and give reward grew massively over the last year, right? They're record growth. Racing is short, right? In the sense that, like, if you were to tune in to watch a race, if you tune in to watch a race for 20 minutes on a Saturday, you get 10 minutes build up, you get the race, which takes a few minutes, and 10 minutes post race. You've seen a whole thing there. The equivalent time, you don't have to watch any of the other races for that to be enjoyable. You get there, you get your quick fix, 20 minutes. Races take about 5 minutes, right? The equivalent time in football and rugby is 2 hours. Look at cricket, the 100. They've been trying to squeeze their sport down into 100. It still takes the whole evening. Racing's 5 minutes long. And then on the other point about people having an appetite for things that give them a bit of thought. Look at NFL, right? People are really into the fantasy side of that, with the statistics and the draft, and fantasy football is ever more popular than it's ever been. Because people, and in-play betting on those sports as well, because people, there is an audience out there which wants to absorb statistics and study something and get reward out of it. Racing is the original sport on this. Like, thanks to its link with betting, the amount of form study that has gone on in horse racing and data is extraordinary. There's things like the 10 to follow, which people can get in, like gamification of racing. The ITV7, right, is hugely popular. The ITV7 was around 40 years ago. Like the Scoop 6 and things like that. Racing has really good offerings on those fronts. And if it builds on those strengths, it can really tap into kind of trends among young people these days.
And I think that's a really good point, Tim. And we've had two questions that kind of come together. One of them says, not a question, but a lot of good work being done on meet and greet, a former racehorse at Racecourses as well, and brilliant for children and families to have a chance to do that. And then Peter Craig said, what about getting small kids, small groups of kids, say 6, to be shown around on race days to see the weighing room, judge, steward, stables, the whole process? And maybe, Arvin, you've traveled a lot with the Godolphin Flying Start. Maybe you can tell us the type of things you've seen on your travels that have been done well elsewhere that you think, you know, could be employed to bring in young people here.
Yeah, so like in Australia, they have a great program called the Thoroughbred Industry Careers. Basically, you have you take like a school leaver around 16, takes a year out, And then there's 6 months in a training stable and 6 months on a stud farm. So they get both aspects of the thoroughbred industry. And then they kind of, at the end of their graduation, they kind of get the choice of to go into a permanent role in one or the other. I think giving them that kind of well-rounded education and being able to see a horse from a birth to competing, seeing that full cyclical journey, it's unbelievably rewarding. I don't think you get that kind of job satisfaction in any other employment. I think that's a fantastic initiative. And of course, regarding the younger school kids, Racing to School back home in the UK do a brilliant job. You often see them. I was at Kempton not long ago, and there was 10, 15 kids near the parade ring and then watching the racing. And actually, they were the most vocal. They made more noise than anybody. Clearly enjoying themselves, enjoying the day off from school. And Racing to School do a great job of making it educational as well, you know, incorporating maths and all their other subjects. So those two really stand out as real pillars of engaging and bringing in young people. And like Tim mentioned, it is very important that from a young age we at least help them understand racing, so that in later on in life they go to a race course and it's not completely foreign to them. They at least have the base level of understanding. Like, I'm not a massive cricket fan, but even I understand the basis of the Ashes. So it's important we bring racing on par with that, and then hopefully we can capture a few of them and make them lifelong fans.
Thanks, but we'll have a quick run through because we're getting close to the end. I'll just do a quick question to same question to all of you, is that if you had one wish that you could change to attract young people into racing, or one thing that you could implement or change, I'll run through the panel and ask you all for what that one thing would be. We'll start with you, Sam.
Yes. I think maybe have, like, in schools, have like a set lesson or an assembly that just exposes everybody to the positives of racing instead of the negatives that maybe they take on from the wider media, just so they can see what we all love.
Okay, that's a really good one. And Elaine, with you, what would be your one thing that you could implement if you had a magic wand?
Just following on from Sam's point, get rid of the misconceptions, show them what a good industry we are and the careers that are available through it. So it's those misconceptions and people's outwardly views sometimes of the industry and what we have to offer.
Yeah, some of the recent stories in racing don't always help us when we're trying to fight those misconceptions, but we're still fighting the battle nonetheless. And same question to you, Tim.
I would, if I had one magical wish and there was an unlimited pot of money, I would times by 10 the amount of kids who can go through programs like Racing to School and all those things, that the more kids that can get a rough idea what horse racing is all about and then have that with them for the rest of their lives, I think that would do the sport a world of good. If you could get all the schools doing that, that would be my one sort of fantasy wish. Okay, and Arvin?
Well, all three have made fantastic wishes. I would do all three of them if I could, to be honest. But mine would be perception is a huge obstacle we face, and I would love for the greater public, not just us in our racing bubble, to see the love and care and outstanding care that the staff give the horses. They're truly well looked after, and nobody loves horses more than the people that work in the racing industry. And that perception of we're cruel or we're hard on our horses is completely inaccurate. We very much love our horses. If it wasn't for the horses, none of us would be sat here. And I would love for the greater public to see that.
No, they're really, really great points. And thank you all. I really like to, we've just come to the end. Unfortunately, as I said, it's such a broad topic. It was going to be impossible to fit in with all the great questions that we got. And we thank you all for joining us and answering them. And we thank everybody who asked the questions and has watched. Of course, you can watch this back online afterwards. The YouTube and podcast links will be emailed out to anybody who has signed up for the newsletter. And if you haven't signed up for it, then please do, because that's how you'll find out about future episodes. When this webinar finishes, there will be a survey that will pop up where you can leave requests or feedback about any topics that you would like us to cover in the future. So please do, because that's the only way we can find out what you'd all be interested in hearing about. And the next webinar, which is the final in this 6-part series, is the enduring power of racehorses to help people exploring the horse-human connection, which will be hosted by me again on Thursday, the 10th of February at 12:30. So if you sign up for the newsletter, you will get the link sent out to you for that. But I will thank all of our guests. They've been absolutely brilliant on this panel today. And I hope you've all enjoyed this little snapshot of this very important topic. And hopefully we'll have come up with some interesting points for the future. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.